aliens mock the samurai blade, until an 11-year-old human proves them wrong. Part 1. The orbital station Concordia Prime stretched across the void like a steel flower, its petals housing representatives from 47 different species. Today, those petals buzzed with activity as the Galactic Council's annual Technology and Culture Fair opened its doors. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the massive halls, admiring weapons that could crack planets, engines that bent space itself, and medical tools that could regrow entire limbs in minutes. Held his grandfather's hand as they walked through the crowd. At 11 years old, he barely reached the waists of some of the taller aliens. His grandfather moved slowly but with quiet dignity, his weathered hands carrying centuries of family tradition. They wore simple clothes, traditional Japanese garments that drew curious stares from passing aliens who were used to seeing humans in their standard Federation uniforms. "Stay close," said softly. "The crowds are thick today." They passed exhibits showing battle armor that could withstand orbital bombardment, medical scanners that mapped bodies down to individual atoms, and mining equipment that could tunnel through asteroid cores in seconds. Each display had crowds of aliens chattering excitedly, their translators creating a constant hum of overlapping voices. Then saw it. At the far end of the hall, a large crowd gathered around a raised platform. The sign above read "Primitive Implements of Warfare, a Historical Perspective." His stomach tightened with unease. "Grandfather," he said, tugging on sleeve. The old man followed his gaze and sighed. "Come, let us see what they have done." They pushed through the crowd until they could see the display clearly. There, mounted on a velvet stand inside a transparent case, lay a katana. The curved blade caught the station's artificial light, and even from a distance could see something was wrong with it. A tall, crystalline being stood beside the display, its body reflecting light in rainbow patterns. This was Han, a curator, and it spoke with the confidence of someone explaining simple facts to children. "This primitive weapon comes from the human of Earth," Han said, gesturing at the sword with one of its many faceted limbs. "Humans called it a katana. They made it by heating metal and hammering it repeatedly, a process that took weeks of manual labor to produce a single blade." Several aliens in the crowd made sounds that translator interpreted as laughter. A massive warrior, its exoskeleton covered in battle scars, leaned toward its companion. "They hit metal with hammers, while we had plasma forges." "Indeed," Han continued. "The blade's edge could cut flesh and light armor, but offered no protection against energy weapons, provided limited reach compared to projectile weapons, and required years of training to use effectively. It represents humanity's attachment to ceremonial obsolescence over practical advancement." More laughter rippled through the crowd. A diplomat, its 6 eyes blinking in sequence, spoke up. "How did humans ever survive their own world with such limited technology?" "Luck mostly," another alien responded, and the crowd erupted in amusement. Felt his face burning, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Beside him, grandfather remained perfectly still, his face showing no emotion, but his hand tightened slightly on shoulder. Han picked up a small plasma cutter from a nearby table. "Observe the difference between human craftsmanship and modern technology. This tool, which any species can purchase for minimal credit, can cut through the same materials as that blade in a fraction of the time, with no training required." The curator activated the cutter, and a blue beam shot out, slicing through a metal bar like it was paper. The crowd made impressed noises. Han pointed back at the katana. That blade would require multiple strikes and significant effort to achieve the same result, assuming the wielder had sufficient skill and the blade didn't break from the stress. "Why preserve it at all?" a small bird-like alien asked. "Cultural significance," Han replied. "Humans are remarkably sentimental about their past. They display these items in museums, write stories about them, even practice using them in what they call martial arts. It's quite charming, really, how they romanticize their primitive origins. Couldn't stay quiet anymore. That's not a real katana, he said, his voice cutting through the chatter. The crowd fell silent. Dozens of alien eyes, sensors, and visual organs turned toward him. Han's crystalline body made a grinding sound that the translator interpreted as surprise. "I beg your pardon," the curator said. "That sword in your case," said, his voice stronger now. "It's a fake, a cheap copy." Han's body flickered through several colors, which recognized as the equivalent of confusion mixed with irritation. "Young human, this blade was acquired from a certified Earth museum. Its authenticity is documented." "I don't care about your documents," said, stepping closer to the display. His grandfather tried to pull him back but shrugged off the gentle hand. "Look at the folding pattern on the blade. It's wrong. A real katana has layers you can see in the metal, made from folding the steel over and over. That one has a pattern painted on." He pointed at the handle. "And look at the tang, the part that goes into the handle. You can see it through the wrapping. It's too thin and the wrong shape. A real katana's tang is wider and secured with a wooden peg. That one looks like it's just glued in place." The crowd murmured with uncertainty. Han leaned closer to the case, examining the blade more carefully. "The documentation is wrong," interrupted. "You bought a fake and didn't know the difference because you don't understand what makes a real katana special. You just see an old sword and think it's primitive." The warrior pushed through the crowd, towering over. Up close, the alien was terrifying, with serrated mandibles and armor plates that looked like they could deflect bullets. Bold words, small human. You claim your species' ancient weapons are special. They're museum pieces, relics. The galaxy moved beyond metal blades ago. "Then you don't understand them either," said, refusing to back down despite his racing heart. Grandfather said quietly, finally placing both hands on the boy's shoulders. "Calm yourself." But couldn't calm himself. Weeks of traveling through space, seeing humans treated as the newcomers, the junior members of the galactic community, watching aliens dismiss Earth's history and culture as quaint and backwards, all of it boiled over in this moment. "None of you understand," he said, looking around at the assembled aliens. "You look at a katana and see a primitive weapon because you measure everything by how much energy it uses or how fast it can kill. But a real katana isn't just about cutting things. It's about discipline, patience, perfection. My grandfather spent 60 years learning to make swords, and his father before him and his father before him, going back 16 generations. Each generation made the process better, more refined, more perfect." "Perfection?" Han's voice dripped with skepticism. "Young human, perfection is a mathematical concept. A blade is simply a tool with measurable properties: edge sharpness, material hardness, weight distribution. These can be replicated by any modern fabrication system in minutes." "Then make one," challenged. "Make a real katana with your fabrication system. Make one that can do what a real katana can do." The warrior made a sound like grinding rocks that translated as laughter. "What can it do that a plasma blade cannot? Cut, stab. These are simple functions." "I don't know what a plasma blade can do," admitted. "But I know what a katana can do in the right hands, and I know none of you have ever seen one used properly." The crowd erupted in conversation. Some aliens laughed, others looked intrigued. The diplomat spoke up. "Is the child challenging us to some sort of demonstration?" "He's just a boy," Han said dismissively. "He doesn't understand what he's saying." "I understand perfectly," said. "You've put a fake sword on display and you're using it to mock my people's history. If you want to judge the katana, judge a real one. Judge it fairly." The warrior leaned down, bringing its massive head level with. Its breath smelled like hot metal. "You want us to judge it fairly? Fine. Bring your real katana. We'll design tests that will prove whether your primitive blade has any merit beyond ceremony. When it fails, as it will, perhaps humans will learn to respect modern technology instead of clinging to ancient superstitions. One of the other cautioned, perhaps this is unwise. No, interrupted. I'm curious now. The humans talk much about their spirit and their determination. Let's see if their craftsmanship matches their pride. The warrior looked at grandfather. You are the elder. Do you accept this challenge on behalf of your species? Turned to his grandfather, suddenly realizing what he'd done. The old man's face remained calm, but his eyes showed something couldn't quite read. Disappointment, pride, concern. After a long moment, bowed slightly. I accept, but I have conditions. First, my grandson spoke from passion, not disrespect. Judge the blade, not the boy. Second, we choose who wields the sword. Third, the tests must be possible for a blade to complete, not designed to require energy or technology. Agreed, said immediately. We'll have the tests ready in 2 cycles. The demonstration will be held in the main arena so all can witness. The warrior's mandibles clicked together in what might have been a smile. This will be educational for everyone. The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with excitement. Heard betting pools already forming, with odds being calculated and broadcast across the station's networks. No one, it seemed, gave the humans any chance of success. As the crowd thinned, grandfather took's hand and led him away from the exhibit. They walked in silence through the halls until they reached the small quarters assigned to Earth's delegation. Only when the door sealed behind them did speak. That was foolish, grandson. I know, said, his earlier confidence draining away. I'm sorry, I just couldn't stand there and listen to them anymore. I didn't say it was wrong, replied. Only foolish. Now you've challenged the pride of multiple species in front of witnesses. The entire station will be watching. He moved to a long, wrapped bundle in the corner of the room and carefully began to untie the cloth. Do you understand what you've committed us to? Showing them what a real katana can do, said quietly. No, pulled away the cloth, revealing a katana in a simple black scabbard. You've committed us to showing them what humans can do when we dedicate ourselves completely to something. This blade is 400 years old. 16 generations of our family have maintained it, reforged it, improved it. Every fold of the steel, every curve of the edge, every detail of the balance represents centuries of accumulated knowledge. He drew the blade slowly. Even in the room's artificial light, the steel seemed to glow with an inner light. The folding pattern in the metal created landscapes of flowing lines, like waves frozen in steel. Had seen the sword before, but never like this, never with the weight of an entire species' reputation resting on it. Tomorrow we begin training, said. You made this challenge, so you will face it. I will teach you everything I can in the time we have. It won't be enough to make you a master, but it might be enough to open their eyes. He looked at his grandson seriously. Are you ready for this? Stared at the blade, feeling the enormity of what he'd done settling on his shoulders like a physical weight. Then he straightened his back and met his grandfather's eyes. Yes, I'm ready. Good, said. Because ready or not, in 2 cycles the galaxy will be watching. Part 2. The training began before dawn, measured by the station's arbitrary day cycle. Stood in the cargo bay that Earth's delegation had converted into a temporary dojo, wearing the traditional hakama his grandfather had packed. The katana felt impossibly heavy in his hands. Your stance is wrong, said, nudging his back foot with his own. Wider. Your center of gravity must be lower, more stable. The sword is not separate from your body. It's an extension of your arms, which are an extension of your spine, which grows from your center. Everything connects. Adjusted his stance. His thighs already burned from holding the position, and they hadn't even started practicing cuts yet. How did samurai train for battles, grandfather? Did they practice this much? More, said simply. A samurai would practice 10,000 cuts before breakfast, another 10,000 before lunch. They would meditate on the blade, sleep with the blade, live with the blade until there was no distinction between warrior and weapon. He walked around, examining his posture from every angle. We don't have that kind of time, so you must learn faster. You must compress years of understanding into hours. That's impossible, said. Yes, agreed. Which is why you must do it anyway. Now breathe. In through your nose, filling your belly first, then your chest. Out through your mouth, emptying your chest first, then your belly. The breath connects your mind to your body. Control your breath, control your body. Control your body, control the blade. They practiced breathing for what felt like hours. Then came the footwork, the basic movements that let a swordsman flow from one position to another without losing balance. Then the cuts, starting with the most basic vertical strike and building up to more complex angles and combinations. By the time the station's artificial sun reached its peak, his arms felt like they might fall off. Sweat soaked through his hakama. His hands had blisters forming despite the careful wrapping had applied. We'll break for food, said, then meditation, then we continue. During their meal in the delegation's quarters, alerts chimed constantly on its data pad. The challenge had gone viral across the station's networks. Every species had weighed in with opinions. The general consensus was that humanity had made a foolish mistake born of pride and ignorance. A military analyst had posted a detailed breakdown of why swords were obsolete, complete with force calculations and material stress analyses. A physicist had written an essay on the superiority of energy-based weapons. Even some human commentators were calling the challenge embarrassing, saying Earth's delegation should withdraw gracefully rather than face public humiliation. Don't read those, said, taking the data pad away. Other people's doubts are irrelevant. The only question that matters is, can you do what needs to be done? I don't know, admitted. I don't even know what the tests will be. What if they make them impossible? Then we fail with dignity, said. But I don't think they will make them impossible. Is a warrior. Warriors respect strength even in opponents. The tests will be difficult, designed to showcase what modern weapons can do better than ancient ones, but they will be fair. He poured tea for both of them, the familiar ritual calming in its simplicity. Tell me, what did you see in that fake sword that told you it wasn't real? The folding pattern was wrong, said, and the tang was too thin. Yes, but why could you see that when the curator could not? Thought about it, because you taught me what to look for. Deeper than that, the curator looked at the sword and saw a weapon, an object with specific properties to be measured and catalogued. You looked at the sword and saw the work of human hands, the intention behind each fold, the purpose of each curve. You understood that a blade is not just its measurements, but the sum of all the choices made in its creation. Sipped his tea. This is what we must show them tomorrow. Not just that a katana can cut, but why it cuts the way it does. The afternoon brought more training, this time focusing on precision. Hung sheets of paper from the ceiling using magnetic clips. Cut straight down through the center, he instructed. If your cut is true, the paper will fall in 2 equal pieces. If your angle is off even slightly, one piece will be larger than the other. His first attempt shredded the paper into ragged pieces. His cuts were too aggressive, too forceful. The sword tore through rather than slicing cleanly. You're fighting the blade, observed. You think you must force it through the target, but the blade is sharp enough to cut with its own weight if properly guided. Your job is not to power the cut, but to aim it. Let the blade do its work. Gradually, through dozens of attempts, began to understand. The perfect cut felt effortless, the blade passing through the paper so smoothly it seemed to disappear. When he achieved it, the paper fell in 2 perfectly equal pieces, the edges mirror smooth. Good, said, again. Evening brought visitors. The door chimed and opened it to find 3 aliens standing outside. The warrior, Han the curator, and a diplomat whose name translated as harmonious seeker of balance. We come to discuss tomorrow's tests, said, his massive form filling the doorway. May we enter? Bowed and stepped aside. The aliens filed in, their different biologies making the small quarters feel cramped. Han's crystalline body refracted the room's lights into rainbow patterns on the walls. The 6 eyes blinked independently, each one focusing on different objects with disconcerting precision. "We have designed 3 tests," the diplomat said in its musical voice. "Each one showcases an area where modern weapons excel. We believe these tests are fair while also being suitably challenging." "Show us," said. Activated a holographic display. The first test appeared, showing a series of cubes made of some dense material. Test 1. Cutting power. These are molecular density cubes used in starship hull construction. They can withstand direct hits from plasma weapons for several seconds. We use industrial cutting lasers to shape them, but even those require sustained application of heat. Your blade must cut through all 5 cubes in sequence with a single strike. Stomach dropped. The cubes looked impossibly solid, their surfaces gleaming like polished diamonds. Test 2. Speed and precision, the continued. The hologram changed to show humanoid-shaped targets on rails. These combat dummies have sensors that detect incoming attacks. The moment they sense an incoming projectile or energy signature, they move at supersonic speeds to avoid it. Energy weapons create thermal bloom before impact. Projectiles create air displacement. Your blade must cut through 5 dummies before they can dodge. "That's impossible," blurted out. "How can we be faster than machines?" "That is the challenge," said, his mandibles clicking. "Modern weapons compensate for target movement with prediction algorithms and overwhelming firepower. Your ancient blade has neither. If it truly is superior, it must find another way." The third test appeared, showing a piece of silk floating in midair. Test 3. Control, Han explained. "This demonstrates the precision of energy weapons. We will suspend a silk cloth using gravity manipulation. Your blade must make 10 cuts, creating a specific pattern without disturbing the cloth's position or creating air currents that cause it to flutter. Energy weapons can modulate their power to avoid thermal wash, allowing for extremely controlled cutting. Can a physical blade achieve the same control?" Studied each test carefully. "These are indeed challenging," he said finally, "but they are fair. We accept these terms." "You're certain?" they asked. "There is no shame in withdrawing. Your grandson spoke from emotion, not understanding. The council would accept a graceful retreat." "My grandson spoke from the heart," replied. "And the heart is never wrong about matters of honor. We will demonstrate tomorrow." After the aliens left, turned to his grandfather with wide eyes. "How can we possibly pass those tests? The cubes are designed to resist cutting. The dummies move faster than we can swing. And the silk test requires us to cut without moving air, which is physically impossible when something moves through it." "You're thinking like they do," said. "You're looking at each test as a problem of force, speed, and power. But remember what I told you. The blade is not separate from the body, and the body is not separate from the mind. These tests don't measure the sword. They measure the person wielding it." He picked up the katana and moved to the center of the room. "Watch carefully. I'm going to show you something, and then you're going to practice it until your body remembers it even when your mind is too tired to think." What followed was the most intensive training session of his life. Demonstrated techniques that seemed to defy physics, cuts that began before the target was in range, movements that looked slow but covered distance impossibly fast, strikes that stopped with such precision that they could split a hair lengthwise. "The secret is in the preparation," explained. "Before the blade moves, your body must be perfectly aligned. Your weight, your balance, your breath, your focus, all must point toward a single moment of perfect execution. In that moment, the cut is not something you do. It's something that happens through you." They practiced through the night. Cut paper until he could hit the same spot repeatedly, each cut cleaner than the last. He practiced footwork until he could move from stance to stance without conscious thought. He meditated on his breathing until he could slow his heart rate at will, calming his body even while his mind raced. As the station's artificial dawn approached, finally called a halt. "Sleep now," he said. For a few hours at least. Tomorrow you'll need all your strength, but more importantly, you'll need a clear mind. Exhaustion clouds judgment. Rest brings clarity. Collapsed onto his sleeping mat, his body screaming with fatigue. But his mind wouldn't quiet. The tests played over and over in his thoughts, each one seemingly more impossible than the last. How could any human, let alone a child, achieve what he'd promised? He must have dozed off eventually, because he jerked awake to find grandfather sitting in meditation position, the katana laid across his knees. Soft morning light filtered through the viewport, casting the old man in a gentle glow. Grandfather said, "What if I fail? What if I embarrass Earth in front of the whole galaxy?" Opened his eyes. "Then you fail, but you will fail with honor, having given your best effort. That is all any warrior can do." He paused, then added, "But I don't think you will fail. You have something they don't expect." "What's that?" "You still see the blade as special. To them, it's a curiosity, a relic, something to be measured and categorized. To you, it's a living tradition, a connection to every and warrior who came before. That belief, that respect, that understanding, it makes all the difference. The blade will answer for someone who truly knows it." A chime sounded, echoing through the station. The announcement came in multiple languages. "The demonstration will begin in 1 hour in the main arena. All species welcome to attend." Stood and began his final preparations. He dressed carefully in clean hakama, tied his hair back the way samurai once did, and centered himself with breathing exercises. When he picked up the katana, it no longer felt heavy. It felt right, like it belonged in his hands. As they left the quarters and walked through the corridors toward the arena, they passed hundreds of aliens heading the same direction. News of the challenge had spread throughout the station. Some aliens pointed at and whispered. Others made comments that the translator helpfully rendered into mocking predictions of failure. But didn't care anymore. He'd spent the night learning something profound. The opinion of others meant nothing compared to the truth of what you could actually accomplish. The tests ahead would be difficult, perhaps impossible, but he would face them with everything he had, and whatever happened would happen. The arena doors loomed ahead, and beyond them could hear the roar of thousands of gathered aliens, all waiting to see the human child fail. He gripped the katana and walked through the doors with his head held high. Part 3. The arena could hold 10,000 beings, and it looked like every single one of them had come to watch. Aliens filled the tiered seating that circled the central demonstration floor. Holographic displays floated overhead, broadcasting the event to other parts of the station and beyond. His translator picked up dozens of conversations, most of them discussing betting odds and predictions of spectacular failure. The demonstration floor itself was huge, easily 50 meters across. At one end sat the 3 testing stations, each one prepared and waiting. The molecular density cubes gleamed under bright lights. The combat dummies stood motionless on their rails, sensor arrays glowing faintly. The silk cloth floated in perfect stillness inside a gravity field generator. Stood at the center of the floor, his massive form commanding immediate attention. When he spoke, the arena fell silent. "We gather today to witness a demonstration of the human weapon known as the katana. The tests before us are not designed to humiliate, but to measure. Modern technology has advanced beyond physical blades for good reasons. Today, we will see if those reasons are absolute, or if there is merit in the old ways that we have overlooked." He gestured toward, and as they approached, "The humans have accepted 3 challenges, each one showcasing areas where energy weapons excel. First, cutting power against advanced materials. Second, speed against automated evasion. Third, control and precision beyond mere force. If the katana fails these tests, we will know definitively that physical blades belong in museums, not in serious discussion of weapons technology." Hand stepped forward, its crystalline body flashing with reflected light. "However," the curator added, "if the blade succeeds, we must reconsider our assumptions about what makes technology advanced. We must ask whether complexity always equals superiority, or if refinement and mastery can achieve what raw power cannot. The diplomat spoke last, its melodious voice carrying easily across the arena. Let us begin. Human child approached the first test. Walked toward the molecular density cubes, his grandfather walking beside him. Up close, the cubes were even more intimidating. Each one was a meter on each side, made of material that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. They were arranged in a row, surfaces perfectly aligned. These cubes represent the pinnacle of material science, Han explained. Their molecular bonds are directionally reinforced, making them nearly impossible to cut without sustained application of energy. Industrial plasma cutters require 10 seconds of continuous contact to penetrate a single cube. To cut through all 5 in one strike should be physically impossible for a handheld blade. Studied the cubes carefully. His grandfather had taught him to see beyond the obvious, to look for the truth hidden beneath the surface. The cubes looked identical, but nothing made by hands or machines was truly perfect. Somewhere in that molecular lattice, there had to be imperfections, points where the bonds aligned slightly wrong, microscopic flaws from the manufacturing process. "May I touch them?" he asked. "If you wish," Han said, clearly thinking it would make no difference. Ran his hand across the first cube's surface, feeling the texture. Then the second and the third. Each one had a unique feel, subtle variations that his fingers could barely detect. He stepped back and closed his eyes, visualizing the path his blade would take, not through the cubes but through the weaknesses in the cubes, the places where the molecular bonds were fractionally less perfect. He assumed his stance, the katana held high in a position called the fire stance. His breathing slowed, his heartbeat steadied. Around him, the arena faded away until there was only the blade, his body, and the target. "Whenever you're ready," announced. Breathed in, filling himself completely. The cut existed in his mind before his body moved, the perfect path already traced through space. He breathed out, and his body executed what his mind had already completed. The blade fell. To most observers, it looked like a simple downward strike. Fast, but not impossibly so. The blade passed through the space where the cube stood, and then was completing his follow-through, bringing the katana to rest in a low guard position. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the first cube slid apart, its top half separating from its bottom half along a diagonal cut so clean it looked like it had been melted. The second cube followed, then the third, fourth, and fifth, all falling apart in sequence like dominoes. The arena erupted in shocked sounds. Aliens surged to their feet, pointing at the cubes. Han rushed forward, scanning the cuts with multiple instruments. The curator's crystalline body flickered through a rainbow of colors that had learned meant profound confusion. "The cuts," Han muttered, examining the surfaces. "They're mirror-smooth. No heat damage, no molecular disruption, no evidence of force trauma. It's as if the blade found the exact angles where the molecular bonds were weakest and exploited them with nanometer precision." "That's impossible," another scientist said, running their own scans. "That would require the wielder to see individual molecular bonds and calculate the perfect angle in real time." "Or," grandfather said quietly from the side, "it requires the wielder to feel the material through the blade, to understand it instinctively rather than analytically. The sword is an extension of the body. What the body senses, the mind knows. What the mind knows, the blade expresses." Clicked his mandibles, a sound of grudging respect. "The first test is passed, unexpected but conclusive. Let us proceed to the second test." Approached the combat dummies, his confidence growing but his focus remaining absolute. These dummies were different from the cubes. They were designed to move, to react, to evade. Their sensors could detect the thermal signature of plasma weapons before they fired, the air displacement of projectiles before they arrived, the energy signatures of any attack before it landed. These dummies have evaded 73% of attacks in military testing, explained with obvious pride. They are used to train warriors in dealing with fast opponents. Their reaction time is measured in microseconds. How can a physical blade, which must travel through space and air, reach them before they move? Studied the dummies, 5 of them evenly spaced along their rails. When he looked closely, he could see the slight glow of their sensor arrays, constantly scanning for incoming threats. The moment they detected an attack, they would move faster than he could blink. But grandfather had taught him something important during their training. The dummies reacted to attacks. But what if the attack was already where they moved to? What if the blade committed to a space in the future rather than the present? It required a different kind of thinking, not swinging at where the target was, but at where the target would be. Not reacting to their movement, but predicting it before they even started. It meant committing to the cut before his eyes could confirm the target was there. The called it warrior's precognition. The samurai called it mushin, the mind of no mind. Whatever the name, it was the state where conscious thought disappeared and action flowed directly from intention. Centered himself again, but this time differently. Instead of planning the cut, he emptied himself of all plans. Instead of thinking about the targets, he became aware of them without thought. His body knew what to do. His job was simply to let it happen. He moved. To the watching aliens, movements looked almost lazy. He walked forward slowly, the katana moving in simple, economical arcs. His cuts didn't look fast or powerful. They looked inevitable. The first dummy's sensors detected the blade only after it had already passed through. The second dummy began to move, but the blade was somehow already in its path. The third, fourth, and fifth followed in rapid succession, each one falling apart before its evasion routines could complete. The arena fell completely silent this time. What they had witnessed was impossible according to every principle of combat they understood. Sensors couldn't be fooled. Automated evasion couldn't be predicted. Yet the boy had done both. Approached slowly, his massive head tilting in what might have been confusion or respect. "How?" he asked simply. "I didn't try to be faster than them," explained, still breathing calmly. "I tried to be in the right place at the right time. The blade went where they would go, not where they were. By the time they detected the attack, it was already finished." "Warrior's precognition," said with something like awe in his translated voice. "We trained for decades to achieve it. Our greatest warriors can predict an enemy's movement 2 or 3 actions ahead. You're 11 human years old. How is this possible?" "The blade teaches," grandfather said. "When you trust it completely, when you stop trying to control every action, it shows you what you need to know. This is what 16 generations of refinement creates, not just a sharper edge, but a tool that guides its wielder toward perfection." The